Welcome to AJ Labs everyone. In this video we are going to look at installing a Windows Server 2019 virtual machine on our VMware Workstation application. The reason being, if I just expand on this, what we're going to want is a domain controller to be able to manage our Active Directory infrastructure. So it's going to be our first domain controller. So initially what we're going to do is install the operating system, Windows Server 2019, and then we're going to install the Active Directory domain services. Once we do that, we're going to install and configure DNS, because we need the server to manage our hosts or client names, and then we're going to install and configure DHCP and its scopes. So the reason we need this server, it's a small lab, so we just need one domain controller that can also act as a DNS server as well as a DHCP server. So when we do create other clients, such as a Windows 10 machine or a Linux machine or whatever it is, we can use that domain controller to provide IP addresses as a DHCP server, as well as use it for naming our other servers and our other clients. For example, this ESXi host, which I'm going to set up later on, I'm going to put this on Active Directory, and I'm going to put this on the DNS record, and then when I want to navigate to this ESXi host through the web browser, I can then use the name ESXi1, as you can see there, ESXi1.ajlabs.com. So rather than typing in the IP address, because I'm going to set up a DNS server, I'll be able to type in the fully qualified domain name. So let's go ahead and start with installing the server. First thing we're going to want to do is open up your VMware Workstation. I've already got mine open. I've already created a virtual machine called DC1. What you're going to want to do, if you don't have any virtual machines here, is you're going to want to click on File, New Virtual Machine, and then you're going to get the setup wizard. You click on Next, stick with the typical, and from there just choose your ISO file. So for me, the location of my ISO file, or my Windows image file for my Server 2019, is here. It's on the H drive. If I just navigate back, yours may be on your C drive in your downloads. Just find your Windows 2019 Server ISO image. I'll put a link in the description area to the Microsoft's website where you can download it. Once you've downloaded it, browse to it and then select it. Click on Next. If you have a product key, put that in. If you don't, it's going to give you the trial version, so just do that. What you're going to want to do is Workstation version 15, Workstation Pro version 15 only recognizes up to Server 2016. So select it as a Server 2016 server. Keep that as it is. Don't change that. You can select standard or data center. It's fine. I'll select standard, in fact, and then create your administrator account. Give your full name, your password for your administrator account, and then what you're going to do is click Next and go through the wizard. So for example, if I just show you, I'll just give it a password here. I'm not going to complete this all the way, but you should be able to complete this all the way and hopefully get your setup done. I didn't enter a product key, so it's just warning me. I'll say yep, continue. Then it's going to ask me where I want to save this to. So for me, I'm going to save it to my H drive. If you've got enough capacity in the C drive and you want to save it there, that's up to you. If you want to browse to a different hard disk and you want to save it somewhere else, that's up to you. Give it a name. I've just called mine DC1, as you can see there, and then select Next. And then it will ask you for the hard disk size. Once you select your hard disk size, 60 gig is reasonably fine. It's the recommended size, so just go with that. And you can split it into multiple files just to make it easier to move around and sort of navigate, move around. And if you want to move the instead of keeping it as one large single file, you can just keep it as multiple small single files in terms of the hard disk. So yeah, click Next on that, and then it just gives you a summary in terms of what it's going to do. These settings you can come back and change later on, or you can customize them now, and then click Finish. I'm not going to click Finish because I've already got my one set up here. Cancel. I'm going to cancel out of that. Once your virtual machine appears here and it's created, what you're going to want to do is power it on. So if I just click on here, on the green button there, or I can just click on the little arrow and say Startup Guest. Click on that. Once you power it on, you're going to want to click in the VM and then press any key as quickly as possible, because you want to boot from the DVD drive that's mounted, as you can see there. So you want to be able to boot from that image file that you've attached as a DVD drive. So power that on, and then press, once I go into the click into the VM, press escape. That's what I did. You probably won't need to do this. This is just because I've already installed Windows Server 2019 on this hard disk. So what I'm going to do is from there just scroll down to my DVD drive and boot from there. Press any key to boot. Yep, and that's just going to load the installation files. We'll just let that load. Now that we've got Windows setup loaded, we're going to select the language. So English UK is the keyboard, or sorry, the format that I'm going to use for currency and time as well as input method. You select the region that you're in, or the geographical location that you're in. Select next, and then click install. So we're going to start the installation process. Select the version of the operating system that you want, standard and standard desktop experience. The difference is standard is just the core version, which is just a terminal. There's no desktop, there's no graphical user interface, and desktop experience gives you the full fledged desktop experience, so you get the whole graphical user interface. I'm just going to go to standard. I'm not going to choose data center. I'll click on next. Accept the license, click on next. What I want to do is a custom install, and then for yourself you're just going to have your one hard disk. For me, I've got to delete all of these because I've already had the Windows operating system installed on here, so I'm just going to delete all of this. For you it should just be one disk, and I'll show you what I mean once I deleted all of this. Let me just go to delete, and yep, what I'll do is I've got two disks attached to this VM. I've created a 200 gig one just as an additional storage, and I've also got my main one which I'm going to install my operating system on, which is the 60 gig one. You should just see a 60 gig disk just like this. Click on it and then just say next. So just let the installation complete. It will take a little while. Once it's completed, then we'll go into the setting up and configuration of the actual server itself. So once the installation is finished, the server will reboot. Just let the reboot process finish, and then it should take us through to the setup wizard. Okay, so here we are. It's taken us to the setup page of the administrator account. So just create yourself a password. Just going to create my admin password, and then just click on finish, and that should set up my domain control. It's my server. So the server's installed now. The operating system is ready to go. We are now ready to log in. What we need to do from here is go to our server manager, which should hopefully launch automatically, and then start installing the roles and the features. So we're gonna I'll just say yes to that, and what I will do is, in fact, before I do that, let me just look at my network and sharing just to make sure my IP address for this server is a static one. So if I click on Ethernet, change adapter options, Ethernet 0. So as I said, I've got multiple adapters connected to this virtual machine, and I'll show you how you can do that for your own one. Click on properties. In fact, before I click on properties, status, details, and it's got the same IP address which I hoped for. Is it obtaining it through DHCP? Yes, it is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this IP address and I'm going to set it manually. So obviously if it's a DNS server, it needs to have a manual IP address on there. So what I will do is take these details and install that and get that set up manually. So I'll click on properties. I'm going to disable IPv6 because I'm not using that. I'm going to click on IPv4 and I'm going to say properties, and then here I shall type in the IP address that I wanted, which is 192.168.220.130, and that's going to be a class C IP address, 255.255.255.0, which is done it for me automatically, and the gateway is going to be 192.168.220.130. 2. In terms of DNS, for now I'm just going to set it to itself, 192.168.220.130. So later on, this obviously is going to be the DNS server, so I'm making sure that it uses itself as the DNS server. I'll click on OK, click on close. I get a little exclamation mark on my network icon because it can't resolve anything at the moment, but that's fine. Click on close. And likewise for yourself, just right click on your adapter, click on status, details, and then whatever IP address you got from the DHCP server, just note that down and use it to manually assign it, as I did, to the adapter. So you give it a manual IP address, and then use its own IP address, which we're going to give it, which we've already assigned it there. Use the IP address for the DNS server as well. So let's come out of that. Okay, so we've got the manual IP address assigned. Now close this off. And the reason I have these other adapters is because I'm using multiple networks within my VMware Workstation Lab, so many of my clients will be on different networks, and I need my DHCP server to communicate with them on those particular networks as well. So I've just given it additional adapters, additional network adapters. Let's close this off. They can't pick up. It's not picking up any IP addresses from DHCP because we haven't configured DHCP yet. But let's move on from that. We're not looking at that at the moment. So yep, open up Server Manager. It should have opened up automatically. Click on Manage. Add roles and features. Click on Next. Next. Click on Next again. And then from there you want to select Active Directory Domain Services. So we're going to add Active Directory in here. So this is going to be our primary domain controller. Click on Next, Next, and then Install. Let that install. It will take a moment, and then what we're going to do is we are going to allow that to install, and then we're going to rename the server to DC1, and then we're going to reboot it, and then set up the Active Directory, and we're going to promote the server as a domain controller. Okay, yep, so the installation is complete. Let's just close that. And now we get a little exclamation mark, a notification. We click on that, and it's asking us to promote the server to a domain controller. I'll do that, but firstly what I'd like to do is rename the machine, or rename the server. When you install Windows, it just gives it a random name. Let's rename it to DC1, and oh sorry, that's the wrong location. In fact, just keep it in work group. That's when we're joining it to a domain. We're not going to do that. Let's say DC1. Well, where am I? Stuff here. DC1. Click on OK. It will take a moment, and then it should just say we'll need to reboot it. Yep, so there we go, it's named. Click OK, close. It will ask us to restart. Let's just restart for now. So it's just rebooting up. Okay, once we've rebooted, just log back into the server, type in your password, and we should get Server Manager again. We don't want to download Windows Admin Center for now. Go to the notification, and then we're going to select Promote this server to a domain controller. So let's do that. We're going to create a, hopefully once this finishes doing its checks, we're going to add it to a new forest because it's our first domain controller. It's going to be our first forest. Select that. Give the domain a name. So mine is going to be ajlabs.com. Select Next. So once that's done, we need to select the functional level of our forest. I'm just going to keep it at the default of Windows Server 2016 as the minimum, both for the forest functional level and the domain functional level. Keep the selections here as default. We don't want to read out in domain controller, and then just create your directory services restore mode password. You can keep it as the same as whatever you had before. Just for the purposes of my lab, I'm just doing that. So click on next once you do that. And we don't want to create a delegation for DNS at the moment. We'll just click on next. It's going to give us the NetBIOS name, which would just be AJ Labs. There we go, so it's given us AJ Labs. We just click on next. It's now asking us to select a location for our database folder, as well as our log files folder and our sysfile folder. Normally you'd want to save this on a separate disk as opposed to the C drive itself, but for the purposes of the lab we'll just keep it as is, and we'll click on next. It gives us a review page of what's going to happen. Review that if you want. Once you're happy with that, click on next, and it will just do some prerequisite checks. Once it passes the prerequisite checks, then we can proceed with the installation. So let's just wait for that to complete. So the prerequisites are done. It's all passed. It's given us a tick up here. All prerequisite checks have passed, and then we just click on install. So that is now going to install our Active Directory domain services. And once that's complete, we will have we will have this server as a domain controller in our New Forest AJ Labs and our AJ Labs domain. So let's just wait for that to complete. Okay, so the installation is complete. It's about to reboot and sign us out. So let's do that. Click on close. Click on close, and we should then just see the server restarting. Let that restart, and then we're going to carry on with the rest of the steps. So once we do that, once we come back in, we are going to carry on with our other tasks. It's just applying the settings, and the reboot is complete. Once again, we just click on Control-Alt-Delete, and this time you can see we've got our domain in front of the administrator account. So AJ Labs and our domain, AJ Labs is our domain, and our user account, which is the administrator, which is automatically now a domain admin account. Just log into that. And what we're going to proceed on doing is installing DNS. So we've installed the server operating system, we've installed Active Directory domain services, we've promoted it to a domain controller. Now we are going to install DNS and then move on to installing DHCP. So in order to install DNS, once again, manage, add roles and features. In fact, we can install both DNS and DHCP at the same time. So let's do that. We'll click on next. Next. Our target server is DC1. Next. And this time we are going to choose the DHCP server role. And the DNS server is already installed. Fantastic. So it's already, I'm not sure if I selected DNS earlier on, but let's move on. If it's just saying it's already installed, so we'll get that set up. If you don't have it installed, just click on DNS as well, and you can get both of these features installed at the same time. So let's click on next, click on next, next, and then install. So let that do its thing. It's going to take a moment, and then we'll proceed on the configuration of DNS, and then we'll do the configuration of DHCP. Okay, the features are the roles are installed, so let's click on close, and let us go to what we have here. Is it's giving us a notification. It's asking us to complete the DHCP configuration. We'll leave that for last. Go to tools, go to DNS, and then as you can see, we've got DC1. Drop down from there, and we've got our forward lookup zones and our reverse lookup zones. What we want to do there is go to AJ Labs, and then in here we've got the records, our A records for our client devices. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a record for my ESXi machine, this virtual machine here, which I'm going to use later on. So if I do new AAA record, ESXi1 is going to be the name. So it's going to be ESXi1.ajlabs.com. So whenever I need to connect to this ESXi host, I'm going to use I'm going to go to the web browser and type in this address, and it will connect me to it rather than using the IP address. So the IP address I need for that particular host is 192.168.220.131. Remember, 130, as you can see here, is my domain controller. So 131 is going to be my ESXi host. Create the associated pointer records. Add host. Okay, can't create that. No problem. Let's leave that as is. And we're going to create one called VCSA for my vCenter server appliance. I'm going to give that the IP address of 192.168.220.133. Let's give it 133 because 132 is going to be my second ESXi host. So let's do that. Create it, and then let's do ESXi 2 192.168.220.132. Okay, so any servers or clients that you want to pre-configure ahead of time, I haven't installed these yet. I mean, this one's ESXi host is already installed, but I'm just setting up this record in DNS, so when I do turn it on and navigate to it, I can just use the DNS record name. But for yourself, if you were to just create a virtual machine on Windows 10, join it to the domain, it will then pick up, it will automatically be added to DNS, so you don't need to worry about that. What else do we need to do? So for my DNS server, let me just right click on here, go to properties. So you want to right click on the actual server itself, properties, and then what you want is your forwarders. So for me, I'm going to edit my forwarders, click on these, delete, 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 and we're going to add the forwarding IP address of 192.168.220.2, which is my my home router's. It's my home network, so it's going to basically forward anything it doesn't recognize to my home router. So click on that. Make sure you put the IP address of your home router or whatever IP address you received on your. If I go back to my virtual networks, Ethernet, change adapter options. No, not so. That's the wrong one. Let's go back into here. Ethernet. So on your, let's go to change adapter options. Oh, right. Let's go to Network and Sharing Center. Change adapter options. Now on here, your Ethernet 0, whatever IP address you got from or you assigned as the default gateway, use that IP address. So initially, when you set up your virtual machine and you powered it on, it would have been given a DHCP IP address from your local machine, from your PC, as it's getting NATed, and then that IP address, remember, we assigned it statically. So I've given this, I manually assigned this. I took the IP address that I was given and then I manually put it in. So you want to use that, the gateway for that, which is the router address. So DNS will then forward anything that it doesn't recognize or can't find to that particular address. So let's go back to DNS. So it will forward, there you go, it's giving me a tick for my forwarder. It can reach my router's address. So you just give your router's address, and then anything it doesn't recognize, it will forward it onto your home broadband router or whatever you're using for your internet access. Click on OK, apply, click on OK, and that's it. That's for me, that's for my DNS configured. Any other machines that I add onto the domain will automatically be populated here. I can then close that off. Now in terms of DHCP, let's go to the notification, click on complete DHCP install or the post install, click on next. I'm going to use my following credentials. I'll say commit, and then that's done. So that's authorized my server as a DHCP server on the domain. What I now need to do is go to my, it's giving me another notification. Actually, it's supposed to done, so I can just close these off so I don't get false notifications. Go to tools, DHCP, and then from here what I want to do is create my scope. So let me just expand this. So as I said, let me just show you my GNS3 network. which I'm using. So this is my GNS3 network. This GNS3 router, it's a Cisco router, is routing my traffic for all of these different networks, 10.2, 10.3, 10.4, and my home NATed broadband router network. So all these different connections, VMnet 2, VMnet 3 and VMnet 4, if I go back to my server, just go back to here. So if I go to my domain controller up here and I right click on my domain controller virtual machine, click settings, what you'll see is I've got 3 network adapters that are additional, so VMnet 2, 3 and 4, and they all connect to GNS3, and from GNS3, within GNS3 they all connect to this particular Cisco router, my VM router, and that router is then doing all my routing for all of these networks. So I've got another video which I'll add onto the link in terms of how I did that and how I set all of this up, which you can watch. But yeah, that's not right now what we're looking at, but there is a video which I'll post in the description area. You can take a look at that video if you want to see how all of this is set up and how I've got GNS3 connected to my VMware workstation. But the key thing is this VMnet 2 is on the 10.2 network, this VMnet 3 is on the 10.3 network, and VMnet 4 is on the 10.4 network. So essentially the server can then communicate with all of those networks and also provide IP addresses on these interfaces if it wants to. So what I'm going to do here is now create my scopes for those networks. So if I go on to here, I'll right click on my IPv4 server there, and I'll click on new scope, click next. Name, I'm just going to give it the name of the IP subnet, 10.2.2.0. That's enough for a description, I know what that is. Starting IP address, 10.2.2.50 for example, and then end IP address I'll just say 10.2.2. Let's say 89. Alright, I'm not going to have that many devices. I'm going to make this a class C IP address with a /24 subnet mask. Click on next. Then it's going to ask me for any exclusions. I'm not excluding anything. The number of days for the lease, just keep it as 8. I'll click on next. And then yes, I want to configure the scope options now. Click on next. And the routing, so the router for that particular subnet is going to be 10.2.2.1. So if I show you my DNS3 again, 10.2.2.1 is on this router here. So I'll click on add, next, and then it's asking me about DNS. So this is wrong, we don't need that. I'm going to remove that, and we're going to type in 192.168.220.130, which is this actual domain controller. And we're also going to use a secondary one of 192.168.220.2 just in case that's needed, which is my default gateway on my home internet. Click on next. Parent domain is AJ Labs, next. And then Windows servers we'll just leave as is, we're not going to put anything in there. Click on next. Yes, I want to activate this scope now. Click on next. And then we'll finish. And we're just going to do the same for the 10.3 scope. Oh, that's a typo. 10.3.3.50, and the end IP address is going to be 10.3.3. oh, done it again. 10.3.3.89. Let's just change that to a 24-bit mask. Won't exclude anything. Leave the lease on for 8 days. It's not really that important for now. And then yes, I want to configure the scope options now. The router is 10.3.3.1. Just add that in. Click on next. DNS is, let's remove that. Do the DNS 192.168.220.130. 130. Oh, go back, add 192.168.220.2. Just add that. And we activate that now. Click on finish. And then finally the last subnet, which is the 10.4, 10.4.4.0, 10.4.4. let's say 50, and we'll end with 10.4.4.89. Make it a /24. Click on next. Don't exclude anything for now. Keep the leases the same. We want to configure the options. 10.4.4.4.1. Add that as our default gateway, and remember that's on the GNS3 router. Click on next, DNS, remove this 192.168.220.130, add 192.168.220.2, and add that. Click on next, activate the scope, finish, and we're done. So what we want to do now is see if this is actually working. So let's just check the statistics. 40 available, fantastic. So if we go to network and sharing, Ethernet, let's go to change adapter options on network and sharing center, change adapter options. I'm just going to go into this interface and go into each one manually, go to IPv4, and I'm just going to type in an IP address for it. So it will basically, when it's running, when it's assigning DHCP IP addresses to clients on each subnet, so for example 10.2.2. Let's call this one 3, it will use it will basically point to this particular server, and the gateway is 10.2.2.1. DNS will keep as ourselves, as this server itself. Click on OK. In fact, we can have multiple gateways on that. Click OK, and do the same on here. Status, properties, remove IPv6, properties. This is, I believe, 10.3.3.3. And DNS is this server. So yes to that. Okay. Close, and finally the last one, status, details, where we are, properties, disable IPv6, and give it a IP address 10.4.4.3 255.255.255.0, and give that its own gateway 10.4.4.1. It doesn't like to have multiple gateways, but it's a lab, so it's perfectly fine. We could actually remove the gateway because they're all on the same VLAN, they're all on the same subnet, but I'm just going to keep it there for now. 168.220.130. Okay, and yeah, let's just close that. The main purpose of this session was to obviously install Windows Server 2019, install Active Directory, domain services, which we did, install and configure DNS, which we did, and then install and configure DHCP scopes. If I turn on my GNS, not my GNS, my ESXi host. Okay, let's just check that DNS is working. And in terms of DHCP, let's go back to make sure DHCP is working as well. So let's go back to close all of this off. Close. Actually, we'll keep this open and minimize that. Let's start up this Windows 10 machine. Now this Windows 10 machine is on VMnet 2, so it should pick up a 10.2.2 IP address. Power that on, and we'll just wait for that to turn on. ESXi is just loading, and Windows 10 is just loading. So what we want to do is we want to make sure our Windows 10 machine can pick up an IP address on the 10.2.2 subnet from the DHCP server, which we just configured, because we need to make sure it's working. So let's just wait for that to load. Okay, so the Windows 10 machine is up and running, and also the ESXi host is up and running. It's got the IP address. Now let's go back to our DC. Let's see if we can ping the ESXi host. So if I said ping ESXi1, which is, remember we put the, if you remember, we put a DNS record in the DNS server. If we ping it, it picks up the IP address. Now what I want to do is go to my local server, and let me just turn off this enhanced internet security feature. Turn that off, and if I navigate to my web browser, ask me later, if I say esxi1.ajlabs.com, I should do HTTPS. Here we are. Yep, DNS is working, so it's just telling me that the site isn't secure. I can go to more information, and then I can just carry on to the site, which is not recommended. But there you go. My ESXi is working, my DNS records are working, so that's good. DHCP. Let's just take a look at that. So if we go to our Windows 10 machine, let's just log into that. Let's see. If we log into this. No, doesn't like that. Okay, I must have got my password wrong. Oh. What was it? What was it? What was it? Ah, there we go. Hopefully that's right. Let's see. Right, so we're in. It's telling me, do you want to allow this PC to be seen on the network? It's detected the network connection, so let's say yes. And then what we want to see is what this connection is. Is it picking up an IP address from my DHCP server? Let's have a look. Open Network and Sharing Center. This machine is a little bit slow. Change adapter settings. And then on Ethernet we are going to say, right click on it, go to status, details, and look at that. We have got 10.2.2.50. It's picked up from the 50 subnet, and if we go to our, sorry, not 50 subnet, it's picked up from the 10.2 subnet. If we go back to our DC, which is also our DNS DHCP server, and we go to tools and then DHCP, if we go to if we right click on our 10.2.2 scope and we right click on it and say display statistics, we should see we have one address in use. There we go. So DHCP is also working. If I go to address leases, it will tell me 10.2.2.50 has been leased to this desktop, and it's on ajlabs.com. Well, it's not on the domain, but it's leased it to that desktop, which is on the same network. So it's all up and running. The PC is telling me, yep, DHCP is enabled, and it's picking up an IP address of .50. The default gateway is 10.2.2.1, which is that GNS router which I showed you earlier on. If I go back to GNS, it's on here, 10.2.2.1, and then it is also got the DNS server configured as we configured it, all the DNS settings as we configured when we were setting up the DNS server. So it's got the DC1 as the main DNS server, and then it's got my home internet router as the secondary DNS server. So everything is up and running. That's it. So let's just close all of this off. Let's just now recap. So what we've done is we've installed Windows Server 2019. We have installed Active Directory domain services, so we can then manage our Active Directory infrastructure. We've installed and configured DNS, all tested and working, and we've installed and configured DHCP, all tested and working. So now within my VMware workstation environment, I can set up my entire data center. I can start setting up more servers, more client devices, more. I can start adding storage devices on there, routing devices such as my GNS3, and everything. All of my infrastructure will all be running on this VMware workstation. But the main goal of today's session was to ensure that we get Windows Server, Active Directory, DNS, and DHCP configured. Hopefully you've been able to follow along and everything has worked for you as expected. That's it for another video, everyone. If you've enjoyed the video or if it's helped you in any way, then please hit the like button. Also subscribe and turn on notifications so you can stay up to date with the latest videos. And hopefully I'll see you all in the next video.